Hello there everyone, it is Toby from TIJ Music and welcome to another album review. Today we take a look at the debut album by the Michael Schenker Group, called the same name. The Michael Schenker Group, the album from 1980. Michael Schenker, formerly of UFO. You could have put formerly of UFO and the Scorpions, but just formerly of UFO there. And in a time where most Michael Schenker albums, whether it be with the Scorpions or UFO, had bare-chested women on the front, we decided to go with a bare-chested man this time, which of course is Michael Schenker himself. And a really cool cover, the back cover with a few of the Doctors there. And the track list on the bottom, this released on Chrysalis Records in August of 1980. There we go. The record's back where it should be. Do apologise about the light outside. It's crazy day. The weather just can't decide what it's doing, so it might get brighter and darker at certain points. But this is the debut album by the newly formed Michael Schenker Group, formed by Michael Schenker himself. He was joined by the then unknown singer Gary Barden to obviously do vocals on this album. He was joined by session musicians Simon Phillips, who played the drums, who previously worked with the likes of Judas Priest and Gary Moore. He was also joined by Mo Foster on bass, who played for more groups than you can possibly think of. And then, of course, Don Airey, who at the time was a member of Rainbow, and as it says on the back cover here, appears courtesy of Rainbow and Polydor Records on the keyboards. But Schenker first heard Gary Barden at the London office of Chrysalis Records. He was singing on a demo tape for the band Fraser Nash, again, old British car. And Schenker presented Barden with a cassette of 30 of his tracks and said, listen to this. And Barden said, all right, I'm in. He was, starstruck by the man with the flying V, Michael Schenker, and he was in. But Michael Schenker himself wanted a new challenge. He'd played lead on the 1979 Scorpions album, Lovedrive. And if you see what I mean about album covers, there's, very much bare-chested woman on the front of the original Lovedrive anyway. But he turned down a permanent rejoining of Scorpions. That was his second stint in Scorpions. And he wants to create his own band. Obviously, he'd been in UFO as well. And his manager put him in touch with Aerosmith. And that, as you can probably imagine, very swiftly died. I couldn't imagine Aerosmith with Michael Schenker. Just wouldn't have worked at all. And there you go, there's the sun. Can't do anything about it. Don't know why I'm moaning about the good weather. But this actually was quite a good commercial success, really. Certainly here in the UK, because it reached a peak position of number 8 in the album charts. Had two decently successful singles. Armed and Ready, the first track on the album, went to number 53. And Cry for the Nations, which I have got the 12-inch here to show off, which went to number 56. On this, you've got the A side, obviously, you've got Cry for the Nations. And then on side B, Armed and Ready and Into the Arena, both recorded live at the Hammersmith and at the Apollo, Manchester. So that's something to show. But this was actually produced by the former Deep Purple at the time. I know he's in Deep Purple now, but at the time, former Deep Purple and current Rainbow bassist Roger Glover, who'd produced good albums beforehand. He'd produced the likes of Sin After Sin and Down to Earth, again, Judas Priest and Rainbow albums. Now, the famous guy at the time, Robert McLange, I can't pronounce that name, Let Us Go in Mutt, who of course produced AC/DC's Back in Black the same year, was potentially offered a chance to produce on this album, but Schenker turned him down. He didn't want to sound like everybody else, and again, this has got quite a distinct sound, and it's a good sound, certainly, for that. So, let's take each track one by one and analyse them. We'll give them a rating out of 10, and then at the end of the review, we will get a verdict. Just want to show the inner sleeve off before we get going. You can see Michael there in the middle, as if the band wasn't all about Michael Schenker, with the lyrics of side 1 around that, and then again another picture of Schenker on the back with the lyrics for side 2. But opening off this album then, the first track is Armed and Ready, and this is the first, and probably by far, the most well-known MSG track. It's usually a show opener, and it certainly was on the One Night at Budokan live album. It's a good opener, no questions about that, with a good rock hook and an excellent solo. But I actually think there's probably better on this album. I don't know if I'm prejudiced here because I've heard it so often, but maybe that's the case. But nevertheless, a very good 8 out of 10 to get us started off. Then we move to this track that I showed you earlier on, the 12-inch single, Cry for the Nations. And I've given this one a 9 out of 10. This is a great track. I actually really enjoyed the opening riff on the track. Some people think the keyboards at the start are really tacky, but I think they're great. And It's a slightly slower tempo, but it suits the track, and I think the guitar solos here, again, everything just fits. It's a very good 9 out of 10. And that very good opening to the album continues with the third track, Victim of Illusion, which again, I've given a 9 out of 10. A great rocker, great riffs, and probably the heaviest track yet that's on the album, actually. Schenker's guitar roar, I think, here is matched by the understated but great vocals from Gary Barden. Then we move to track number 4, instrumental, Bijou Pleasurette. Probably butchered that, but oh well. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. Which is a bit of a shame because after such a strong start, this moves it down slightly. This is the first of 2 instrumentals on the album. Just in case you hadn't noticed, this is the Michael Schenker Group. Therefore, you know, there's a clear, distinct display of the man with the flying V guitar. You can obviously see that. But I think especially when it's compared to the second instrumental on the album, which we'll come to later, it really does come off second best. It's okay, but doesn't really do too much for me. And after such a strong start with the first 3 tracks being really good hard rock tracks, it's a little bit of a shame. And I don't really see too much in Bijou Pleasurette, so I'm going to give that one a 6 out of 10. And then closing off side 1, the band managed to tick off the 80s cheesy rock theme here, which feels like a good thing. It's not a bad track, to be honest. It's a 7 out of 10. But it's a real shame because the album has such a strong opening and very much saturates towards the end of side 1. It's an obvious thing to say, but the guitar licks are killer on this track, but the lyrics aren't anything special. You know, it's, I know what I need and you've got what I want, use your imagination. Got that look in your eyes, so hard to disguise your situation. You know, it just doesn't really do much. But I think Michael saves this track, you know, with his great guitar playing. So I'm going to give that one a 7 out of 10. So we've got through the first side very, very quickly. There are more comments for side 2, which I think side 2 is the best side of the album. I guess there are less tracks on it. There's only 4 tracks on it, but there's some really solid tracks on this. 2 of the 10 out of 10 tracks appear on this side. And we're going to start with one of them, Into the Arena, track number 6 on the album. This is the second instrumental, as I discussed a little bit earlier. And I must confess, I listened to this album a little bit earlier on the record player. When I went to change from side 1 to side 2, I just cranked the volume up just slightly more because I knew this was first on side number 2. Now, as I said, usually I'm not that big on instrumentals, but this is absolutely excellent. And before I mention Schenker, because this is meant to be a solo, you know, an instrumental solo, solo is a harsh word here because Simon Phillips, the drummer, does a fantastic job on this track, and there's also some great keyboards as well from Don Airy. But in terms of Michael Schenker here, what else is there to say but wow? It is tremendous, and you've got the signature solo instrumental from Eddie Van Halen, which is on, of course, their debut album called Eruption, and this very much, I think, in the same vein as that. Absolutely killer stuff. This 10 out of 10 for me. And the best part of this track is kind of that second half when you've got the drums, brings in the keyboard, and then Schenker's guitar. It's just executed brilliantly here. Even I can see that as not a massive fan of instrumentals. So this has to be top marks at a 10 out of 10. We then move to track number 7, which I have, funnily enough, rated at a 7 out of 10. Looking Out From Nowhere. And for me, this kind of comes halfway between sounding like 80s cheesy rock and a good album track. Therefore, it doesn't really do too much more from me. It's certainly not filler, you know, don't get me wrong there. It's certainly not filler, but I guess anything isn't going to be great if it comes after Into the Arena. It's a solid album track, but as I say, it isn't really too much more than that. Track number 8, and it feels like we're going in a pattern here. Don't worry, that's going to break for the last track on the album. The penultimate track, though, is an 8 out of 10, and that is Tales of Mystery. And this is a slower track, a ballad. And some people hate that. Why do we have to have ballads on these albums? You know, they're meant to be hard rocking, and some people just want hard riffage throughout. You know, fair enough. But I'm on the contrary. I really like the ballads, so that's a plus mark from me here. And some of Michael Schenker's later solo albums, i.e. just Michael Schenker, not the Michael Schenker Group, have some excellent acoustic playing, and he's really excellent. I think this is an early display of this, definitely is. And I think this is the most underrated gem on this album, with a guitar tone matched very well by Gary Barden on vocals. And another great guitar solo here, so as I alluded to, an 8 out of 10. Then we come to the final track. I smile because it's so good. Lost Horizons, track 9 out of 9 and a 10 out of 10. And it's fair to say every good album has to have at least one epic. And this is the second. This is almost an 11 out of 10. If I could rank it at that, I would, but I can't. This, for me, is the best Michael Schenker Group track period. I don't know if it's the best Michael Schenker track period. There are a lot of competitors to go up against to be crowned champion of that. But I think in terms of MSG tracks exclusively, this has to have a very good cause to be top of the pack. The build-up at the beginning, and then the heavy guitars, and then the doom, doom, down. See, I try and do that, and don't execute it well, but you know what I'm talking about if you've heard this album before. The opening to this track is absolutely brilliant. It's killer, and I'm actually amazed it's not mentioned more often in that holy grail of great hard rock tracks, because it is excellent. And again, I just think Gary Barden's vocals here are fantastic. You know, it's so much really for the band. Cozy Powell and the band's manager after the second album wanted someone who was more aggressive and a better singer. And personally, on Assault Attack, the third album, I don't think Graham Bonnet does a better job than Gary Barden. This is killer at MSG, and I couldn't imagine anybody else doing it. So, great guitar licks, great vocals, and, you know, a well-put-together album, I think, by the two guys, Gary Barden and Michael Schenker, and then the three session musicians also do a very good job here as well. So, the verdict comes out at an 8.2 out of 10, which, to be honest, is a very good first effort. Now, this is definitely where very much it starts and ends for MSG in terms of their commercial success. They had the two decent singles. It went to number 8, of course, in the UK charts. But that was it, really. Was it the musical height? Tough to say. I'm going to do a review in a few weeks, I think, of their second album. Again, titled MSG. It's fair to say that the Michael Schenker Group weren't very inventive with their albums, because this album was called the Michael Schenker Group. The 1981 MSG. And then there was I think the third album released by the Macaulay Schenker Group, again, was called MSG. Make it hard for us, why don't you? Particularly as a content creator trying to title his video. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know if it was the musical height. I think that it's very close to that second album. I think the second album maybe is more consistent, possibly. But maybe this one has more of the killer tracks on it. It's that blend, I suppose. Maybe the second album comes down a little notch, but is more consistently at that notch. But this one has real displays of brilliance, but then comes down more. It's tricky to decipher between those two. But I guess we'll only see when we go through the second effort of 1981 to see where the verdict comes out. But a little bit of a shorter review today. But some albums, I guess there just aren't as many talking points. That's not to say it's a bad album, but it is a very good album, and I've enjoyed playing this again. Just had a bit of a Scorpions/Michael Schenker fest, if you want to put it that way, in the last few weeks. So I thought I'd give this album a review, and if you enjoyed it too, make sure to leave a like down below and comment your thoughts as well. What do you think of this album? Do you disagree with me about Assault Attack? Do you think it's the best thing that the Michael Schenker Group have ever done? Possibly. But we all have different opinions, and that's why we all love music. But remember to subscribe for regular album reviews, top 10s and all the rest of it, and I'm glad the sun's coming in at the end. We've had hail, rain and sunshine today. You know, can't do anything more, but luckily I think Michael Schenker's brought the sun out, clearly. But if you enjoyed that, make sure to subscribe, as I said, for regular album reviews and top 10 choices. And of course, if you've got any requests for albums, tracks or anything like that, let me know down below, and you know, I'll read all your comments and I'll look to respond where possible and applicable as well. But thank you for your company today. I've been Toby from TIJ Music, and I'll see you again soon for another album review. Goodbye for now.